Imagine being told to choose a new mother, not from women who love you, but from a parade of wealthy strangers competing for your father's fortune. That was the strange reality for young Ethan, the son of a millionaire widower. His father thought he was giving him the gift of family, but what no one expected was the shocking choice Ethan would make, a choice that would change all their lives forever. So grab your popcorn because this is not just a tale of wealth and appearances. It's about a child's wisdom, a maid's quiet love, and a decision that turns society upside down. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you hooked until the very end. Victor Daniels was the kind of man who made people whisper when he entered a room. A self-made millionaire in real estate, his sharp suits, polished shoes, and commanding voice marked him as a man of power. Yet behind the marble walls of his grand mansion, Victor carried a private wound. He was a widower. His wife, Emma, had passed away when their only son, Ethan, was just 4 years old. Years had passed, and Victor had raised Ethan with the help of housekeepers and nannies, but he could not ignore the emptiness that lingered in their home. Ethan, now 10, was bright and curious, but his father often found him gazing at old photos of his mother. It pained Victor to see his son growing up without the warmth of a mother's love. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold, Victor made a decision he believed was wise. He summoned Ethan to the study, a large oak-paneled room with shelves lined in leather-bound books and a fireplace that rarely burned. Ethan padded in, holding a toy car in one hand. "You called me, Dad?" Victor motioned for him to sit. "Yes, son. I've been thinking about our lives. You're growing up fast, and I don't want you to miss out on having someone who can care for you the way a mother should." Ethan tilted his head, confused. "But I already had a mom, and she was the best." The way shadow crossed Victor's face, but he pressed on. "Yes, you did, and she will always be in our hearts. But life must go on. A boy needs guidance, and I need companionship, which is why I've decided." He paused, leaning forward. "It's time I remarry." Ethan frowned, gripping his toy tighter. "Remarry?" Victor nodded firmly. "Yes, and I want you to be part of the decision. I've invited 5 women, all respectable, wealthy, and from good families. They'll visit us over the next week. And when it's time, you'll tell me which of them you'd like to be your new mother." Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You want me to pick a mom? Like, like picking a toy from a shelf?" Victor chuckled, missing the seriousness in his son's tone. "Not quite, Ethan. Think of it as choosing someone who will take care of us both. It's important that you feel comfortable with her." Ethan looked down at his hands, his small voice trembling. "But what if I don't like any of them?" Victor's jaw tightened. He had already convinced himself this was the right plan. "Then you'll need to look deeper, son. These women are successful, refined, and can provide the stability we need. Trust me. I know what's best." Ethan didn't argue further, but his young heart felt heavy. The idea of strangers parading through his life, each one pretending to love him just to impress his father, made his stomach churn. He thought of his mother's gentle laugh, the way she used to kiss his forehead before bed. Could anyone ever replace that? That night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the mansion. His father's words echoed in his ears. 5 women, a new mom. I have to choose. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the mansion, a young maid named Lily quietly went about her duties. She wasn't from wealth or high society. She was just an ordinary girl with calloused hands and a gentle smile. Lily had worked in the Daniels mansion for nearly 2 years, and while most of the staff faded into the background, she had always been different with Ethan. She listened when he spoke, laughed at his silly jokes, and told him bedtime stories when his father was away on business. Ethan often confided in her, things he never told his father. To him, Lily wasn't just a maid. She was a friend, and sometimes she felt like the only person in the house who truly saw him. Little did Victor know that the grand plan he had set in motion, a parade of wealthy women meant to secure his son's future, would collide with the quiet loyalty of a maid who asked for nothing. And when the time came, it wouldn't be diamonds, designer gowns, or fancy titles that won Ethan's heart. It would be love. The next morning, the mansion was buzzing with unusual activity. The floors had been polished until they gleamed. The chandeliers sparkled, and the dining table was set with Victor's finest china. The staff scurried about, preparing for the arrival of the first of the 5 women Victor had carefully selected. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, swinging his legs nervously. He didn't like this idea of auditioning moms, but he kept his thoughts to himself. His father had spoken firmly, and Ethan knew when it was pointless to argue. The grand doors opened, and in swept the first candidate, Patricia Caldwell, a tall woman in her early 40s, draped in a designer gown that glittered under the lights. Diamonds sparkled on her fingers, and her perfume filled the air long after she entered. "My, what a magnificent home you have, Victor," Patricia gushed, kissing Victor's cheek. She glanced at Ethan briefly, offering a stiff smile. "And this must be Ethan. What a charming boy." Ethan nodded politely, but he noticed how her eyes quickly drifted back to his father, as if he were nothing more than an accessory. When the meal was served, Patricia spoke endlessly about her social connections, her travels to Paris, and the yacht she recently purchased. Not once did she ask Ethan about his favorite subjects in school or what games he liked to play. Ethan sat quietly, his appetite fading. Lily, who was serving at the table, caught his eye and gave him a small, encouraging smile. That smile gave him more comfort than Patricia's entire performance. The second woman arrived 2 days later, Vanessa Moore, a glamorous widow with a sharp tongue and a sharper gaze. She arrived in a sleek black car and entered the mansion as if she already owned it. She hugged Victor tightly and then crouched before Ethan, pinching his cheek. "Oh, what a sweet little boy. Don't worry, darling. Once I'm your new mommy, I'll make sure you dress better. These shoes don't suit you at all." Ethan frowned, pulling his foot back. He didn't like being inspected like a doll. At dinner, Vanessa spent most of the evening praising herself for her investments, subtly bragging about how she could complement Victor's empire. She laughed at his jokes loudly, too loudly, and shot annoyed looks at the staff if they moved too slowly. When Lily accidentally dropped a spoon near her, Vanessa sneered. "Clumsy girl. Honestly, Victor, don't you train your help properly?" Ethan's little fists clenched under the table, but he kept quiet. Inside, though, he felt a protective anger rise for Lily. The third woman, Clarissa Hill, was younger, barely in her 30s, and breathtakingly beautiful. She arrived with expensive gifts, a gold watch for Victor and a high-tech gaming console for Ethan. At first, Ethan's eyes lit up. No one had ever given him something so grand before. But when he thanked her shyly, Clarissa waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Oh, it's nothing, sweetheart. Just remember that I'm the one who gave it to you, okay? That way, when your father asks, you'll know who to choose." Her words sank into Ethan's chest like ice. The gift suddenly felt like a bribe, not a kindness. He set the console aside, his excitement gone. The fourth woman, Monica Grant, was a talker. She filled the mansion with her booming voice, retelling stories of lavish parties and her collection of luxury cars. She barely noticed Ethan's silence and interrupted Victor repeatedly to boast about how admired she was in society. When Ethan spilled a little juice by accident, Monica recoiled in disgust. "Goodness, Victor, the boy's manners need polishing." "Don't worry, I'll fix him once I'm his stepmother." Ethan's cheeks burned, humiliation and anger swirling inside him. He caught Lily quietly kneeling by his side, wiping the spill without a word, her face calm and kind. That small gesture comforted him more than Monica's loud promises ever could. Finally, the fifth woman, Selena Roberts, arrived. She was the youngest of them all, radiant and charming, but her eyes carried calculation. She leaned close to Victor throughout dinner, whispering things in his ear and laughing. With Ethan, she tried too hard, ruffling his hair and speaking in a babyish voice. "Do you want me to be your new mommy, sweetie? Wouldn't that be fun?" Ethan looked away, uncomfortable. She didn't want to know him. She wanted his approval as a prize. By the end of the week, Ethan had met all 5 women. Each of them was wealthy, polished, and eager to secure Victor's favor. But to Ethan, they all blurred together. Women who saw him as a stepping stone to fortune, not as a boy longing for real care. Every evening after they left, Ethan would slip into the kitchen where Lily worked quietly, washing dishes or preparing his favorite snacks. She never asked about the rich women, never boasted about herself. Instead, she listened when he needed to talk, laughed when he cracked jokes, and always made sure he felt seen. One night, Ethan sat at the counter, swinging his legs as Lily sliced apples for him. "Lily," he said quietly, "why do grown-ups always try so hard to look important?" Lily smiled gently. "Because sometimes, Ethan, people think their value comes from what they own, not from who they are. But real worth, real love, isn't something you can buy." Ethan's small chest swelled with warmth. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he began to understand what his heart already knew. The contest for a new mother had only just begun, but Ethan's choice was already clear. The Daniels mansion sparkled as always, its chandeliers glowing, the marble floors spotless, and the air filled with the faint fragrance of roses from the sprawling garden. Yet despite all the glamour, Ethan felt lonelier than ever. The 5 women his father had invited paraded in and out, leaving behind gifts, laughter, and promises, but none of them made him feel seen. One afternoon, after Clarissa had left with her designer heels clicking down the steps, Ethan slipped away to the kitchen. Lily was there as usual, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a pot that had long since lost its shine. She looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that made Ethan feel instantly lighter. "Back so soon?" she asked, rinsing her hands. "I thought you'd be playing with that new gadget Miss Clarissa brought you." Ethan shrugged, dragging a stool to sit by the counter. "It doesn't matter. She didn't give it to me because she cares. She just wants me to say she's the best." Lily paused, drying her hands on her apron, then sat across from him. "And how did that make you feel?" Ethan fiddled with a spoon, his voice soft. "Like, I'm not really a person. Like I'm just a prize." Lily's heart ached at his words. She reached across the table, her rough hand resting gently over his small one. "You're not a prize, Ethan. You're a boy with a big heart. Don't ever forget that that night a storm rolled in. Rain lashed against the windows and thunder growled in the distance. Victor was away on business, leaving Ethan in the care of the staff. As lightning streaked across the sky, Ethan tossed in his bed, shivering under the covers. Memories of his mother flooded him, her lullabies, her warm embrace. The emptiness felt unbearable. Unable to stay alone, Ethan tiptoed down the hall and found himself outside the kitchen, where a dim light glowed. Inside, Lily sat with a candle, sewing a button onto one of his shirts. She looked up as he entered, her expression softening immediately. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked gently. Ethan shook his head, clutching his pillow. I I miss Mom." His voice cracked on the last word. Lily set the shirt aside and walked to him. She knelt down so they were eye level and brushed a tear from his cheek. "It's okay to miss her, Ethan. She loved you more than anything. And love like that never goes away." Ethan's chin wobbled. "But it feels like everyone's trying to replace her. Dad says I have to pick one of those women. But none of them feel like her. They don't even try to know me." Lily hugged him tightly, the kind of embrace that melted the fear right out of his small body. "No one can replace your mom. She's always going to be your mom no matter what. And as for choosing, don't let anyone force you. The right kind of love doesn't need to be chosen. It shows itself." For the first time that night, Ethan's breathing slowed. He curled up beside her on the couch, his head resting against her shoulder. Lily hummed softly, not the same lullabies his mother used to sing, but something simple and soothing. Within minutes, Ethan drifted into sleep, safe in the arms of the one person who had never treated him like a prize or a burden. The next morning, Victor returned to find Ethan in the kitchen, helping Lily knead dough for bread. Flour dusted his hair, his hands were sticky, but his laughter filled the room. Victor blinked, surprised. "Ethan," Victor said, adjusting his tie, "why on earth are you in here? You should be with your tutor." Ethan grinned, wiping flour on his cheek. "I wanted to help Lily. She's teaching me how to make bread." Victor frowned, glancing at Lily. "You shouldn't waste time like this, son." That's what the staff is for. Ethan's smile faltered, but Lily quickly intervened. He wasn't a bother, sir. He was a big help, actually. Victor sighed, shaking his head. Well, finish up quickly. One of the ladies will be visiting this afternoon. I want you to be ready. Ethan watched his father leave, then turned back to Lily, whispering, See what I mean? To him, this is all just a game. Lily gently tapped flour onto his nose, making him giggle again. Then don't play by anyone else's rules, Ethan. Make your own. That afternoon, Vanessa arrived in a glittering red gown, her diamond earrings catching the sunlight. She brought Ethan a designer jacket and handed Victor a gold pen. But when Ethan tried to show her the bread he had baked with Lily, she wrinkled her nose. I don't eat bread. Too many carb, she said dismissively, patting his head. Now tell me, which of us do you think would make the prettiest mother, Ethan's chest sank, and he set the bread aside quietly. Vanessa didn't notice. But Lily, standing in the corner with her apron dusted in flour, saw his disappointment. Their eyes met, and Ethan gave her a small, secret smile. He knew the answer already. The women might have wealth, beauty, and influence, but only Lily had love. Victor Daniels believed in appearances. For him, reputation was everything, and nothing displayed power more than a perfectly staged dinner. That's why, after the parade of visits, he decided to gather the 5 women together in the mansion's grand dining hall. He wanted to see how they behaved in each other's company, and more importantly, how they would interact with Ethan. The long mahogany table gleamed under the golden chandelier. Crystal glasses sparkled, silverware was polished, and the aroma of roasted lamb and truffle soup filled the air. Ethan sat near his father, his small hands folded in his lap. He wore a crisp suit that felt too stiff on his shoulders, and his heart felt heavier than ever. One by one, the women arrived. Patricia swept in first, her gown shimmering like liquid gold. Vanessa followed, bold and radiant in scarlet. Clarissa appeared with a smug smile, her designer handbag dangling like a trophy. Monica laughed her way into the hall, already boasting about the event she had just left. Finally, Selena glided in, her perfume arriving a full second before she did. Ladies, Victor greeted warmly, kissing their hands. Thank you for joining us. Tonight is important, not just for me, but for Ethan. I want him to see the qualities that make each of you exceptional. The women exchanged polite smiles, though their eyes darted at each other with hidden rivalry. They took their seats and the meal began. Almost immediately, the contest started. Patricia leaned forward, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Victor, last month I hosted a charity gala. We raised over $2 million for children's hospitals. With me as your partner, the Daniels legacy would shine brighter than ever. Vanessa laughed softly. That's commendable, Patricia. But let's be honest, charity is also about influence. I have personal ties with 2 senators and a governor. Imagine what kind of doors that could open for Ethan's future. Clarissa smirked, brushing her flawless hair over her shoulder. Connections are fine, but class is everything. And I, Victor, know how to turn every event into a headline. With me, your empire wouldn't just be powerful, it would be envied. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, stabbing at his food without eating. He didn't understand why they kept speaking as if he were invisible, as though his future was a bargaining chip. Monica clapped her hands together, her voice booming. All these words, but none of you understand what matters most. Presence, confidence, leadership. That's what I bring. Victor, if you want someone who can truly stand by your side, it's me. Selena leaned close to Victor, her voice syrupy. You don't need someone to stand by you, Victor. You need someone who understands you, someone who can keep your secrets and make life sweet. She trailed her fingers across his hand, ignoring the other's glares. Ethan clenched his jaw. He wanted to scream that none of this mattered, but his father seemed to be enjoying the attention. When the servants brought the next course, Lily was among them, carrying a tray of drinks. She moved quietly, setting glasses before each guest. But as she leaned to pour water for Patricia, her hand trembled slightly, and a few drops splashed onto Patricia's gown. Patricia gasped dramatically, dabbing at the spot with a napkin. Oh, for heaven's sake! Can't you even pour water properly? She turned to Victor with a sharp look. You really must train your staff better. Such incompetence is unacceptable in a home of this standard. The other women chuckled softly, nodding in agreement. Ethan's chest burned. He pushed his chair back abruptly, the scrape echoing through the hall. "Stop it!" he shouted, his small voice cracking with emotion. All heads turned in shock. Ethan stood, fists clenched, his eyes blazing. "Don't talk to her like that. Lily takes care of me more than any of you ever have. She's kind, she listens, and she doesn't treat people like they're nothing." The room froze. Patricia blinked, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. Vanessa looked away, uncomfortable. Clarissa frowned, clearly annoyed at the disruption. Monica huffed, muttering, "Children these days?" Selena arched a brow, smirking at Victor as if daring him to control his son. But Victor didn't speak. He was stunned. He had never seen his quiet, reserved son so fierce. Ethan's voice trembled but grew stronger. "You all keep talking about money and power, but none of you even asked me what I like or how I feel. Do you think that's what being a mom is? Buying things and bragging about yourselves? Well, I don't want any of you." He turned to Lily, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with tears threatening to spill. "If I have to choose a mom, I already have one. It's Lily." The words echoed in the silent hall. Gasps erupted. Patricia scoffed loudly. Vanessa muttered something about nonsense, and Clarissa looked horrified. Monica crossed her arms in outrage, while Selena chuckled under her breath. Victor's face turned pale. "Ethan," he began, his voice uncertain. But Ethan didn't flinch. He walked over to Lily, taking her hand in his small one. "She's the one who cares about me. She doesn't need diamonds or fancy dresses. She makes me feel loved. That's all I want." The room erupted into chaos. The women protested angrily, voices overlapping. "This is ridiculous. You can't be serious. A maid." "Victor, are you hearing this?" But Ethan held Lily's hand tightly, his chin lifted with determination far beyond his years. For once, the little boy who had always been quiet had spoken, and no amount of wealth or influence could silence him. The dining hall buzzed with outrage. The 5 wealthy women were on their feet, their elegant gowns swishing as they argued over one another like birds fighting for scraps. Their carefully composed faces twisted with anger and disbelief at Ethan's words. Patricia's voice rose above the rest. "Victor, this is an insult. I will not sit here and be humiliated by a child. A maid? Really? Do you know what people will say if this madness spreads?" Vanessa jabbed a manicured finger toward Lily. "She manipulated him. I'm sure of it. Children are impressionable. She's been whispering into his ear, turning him against us." "You should dismiss her immediately," Clarissa scoffed, her tone dripping with contempt. "Imagine, Victor, your empire represented by a servant at your side. Do you want your name dragged into the mud?" Monica laughed harshly. "This is exactly why children shouldn't make decisions. They don't know what's best for themselves." "Leave it to us adults," Selena smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Or maybe, Victor, this is your fault. You let a maid play house with your son, and now he's confused about who deserves to be in his life." Ethan's hand tightened around Lily's, his small voice cutting through the storm. "I'm not confused. I know exactly what I want. She's the only one who's ever made me feel loved." Lily's eyes glistened with tears, but she stood frozen, caught between shock and fear. Her place in this house was fragile. One wrong word and she could lose everything. Victor raised a hand, silencing the chaos. His face was stern, but his eyes betrayed a storm within. He looked at Ethan, then at Lily, then back at the furious women. "Enough," he said firmly. "All of you, sit down." The women obeyed reluctantly, their eyes still shooting daggers toward Lily. Victor turned his attention to his son. "Ethan, do you understand what you're saying? These women are educated, respected, and come from powerful families. Choosing one of them could secure your future." Ethan's chin lifted stubbornly. "I don't care about money or powerful families. I care about someone who loves me, and Lily does. None of them do." The room fell silent again. Even the women couldn't hide the sting of his words. Victor leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He had never expected this. His entire plan, carefully arranging these matches, envisioning a glamorous new wife, picturing a family restored in status, had crumbled in seconds. His son hadn't chosen wealth or influence. He had chosen love in its simplest form. Patricia broke the silence with a scoff. This is absurd, Victor. If you allow this farce to continue, you'll lose your standing in society. No respectable man marries beneath him, Vanessa added coldly. If word gets out that your son prefers a maid over women of class, your business rivals will eat you alive. But Ethan spoke up again, his young voice unwavering. Dad, you always tell me to be honest. So I'm being honest. I don't want a fake mom. I don't want someone who just wants you for your money. I want Lily. Victor's gaze flickered toward Lily, who quickly lowered her head, whispering, Sir, I never asked for this. Please don't think I influenced him. Ethan just... She trailed off, her voice breaking. He just sees me as family. But if it displeases you, I can... Stop, Victor interrupted, his voice sharper than he intended. He pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to process everything. The women's outrage, his son's defiance, Lily's trembling humility. It was too much at once. Clarissa pushed her chair back dramatically. I won't be part of this circus. Good luck, Victor, with your little fairy tale. She stormed out, her heels clacking angrily. Monica soon followed, muttering about wasting her evening. Vanessa and Patricia exchanged a look of disgust and swept out together, their perfumes lingering behind them. Only Selena lingered for a moment, smirking as she whispered in Victor's ear, You'll regret this. Then she, too, left. The hall was finally quiet, leaving only Victor, Ethan, and Lily. Ethan's eyes brimmed with tears, but he didn't let go of Lily's hand. Dad, please don't be angry. I just want someone who loves me like Mom did. And that's Lily. Victor stared at his son, his heart torn. He had built his life on deals, appearances, and strategy. Yet here was his son, the one person he claimed to be doing all this for, choosing love over everything else. Slowly, Victor stood and walked toward them. Lily's breath caught, bracing herself for dismissal. But instead, Victor crouched in front of Ethan, his expression softening. You really believe she loves you? He asked quietly. Ethan nodded firmly. With all my heart. Victor looked at Lily, whose eyes shone with unshed tears. For the first time, he truly saw her, not just as a maid, but as a woman who had quietly filled a mother's role without being asked. The warmth in Ethan's eyes whenever he looked at her told the story better than words ever could. Victor straightened, his decision still unspoken, but something inside him had shifted. The world might call it scandalous, but his son had just shown him a truth he had long forgotten. Love, not wealth, was the foundation of family, and for the first time in years, Victor began to question if society's rules were worth more than his son's happiness. The mansion had never felt so quiet. The echoes of the wealthy women's protests still lingered in the halls, their angry voices fading into the night. Only 3 figures remained in the grand dining hall. Victor Daniels, his son Ethan, and the humble maid Lily, who now stood frozen, uncertain of what her future held. Victor paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. His mind spun with conflict. On one side there was his reputation, the business partners, the high society dinners, the whispers of scandal that would follow if people discovered his son had chosen a maid over 5 powerful women. On the other side stood his boy, his only child, the son who had spoken with more courage and truth that evening than many men twice his age. Ethan broke the silence first. Dad, he said softly, please don't be mad at her. Don't fire Lily. It wasn't her fault. I chose her because she makes me feel loved. Isn't that what matters? Victor stopped pacing. He turned slowly to look at his son, the boy whose eyes mirrored Emma's, his late wife. A lump rose in his throat. All his life, Victor had fought to build wealth, power, and status. But in that moment, none of it seemed as important as the simple plea in his child's voice. He exhaled heavily and walked toward Ethan. Kneeling, he placed both hands on his son's shoulders. Ethan, you've taught me something tonight. Something I forgot a long time ago. Love isn't measured in diamonds or bank accounts. It's measured in care, in sacrifice, in the way someone shows up when no one else does. Ethan's eyes brightened with hope. So, you'll let Lily stay? Victor's lips curved into a small smile. Not only will she stay, but I think you're right. She's been more of a mother to you than anyone else could be. Lily gasped softly, her hands trembling. Sir, I... please, I never wanted to overstep. I was only doing my duty. Victor turned to her, his voice firm yet gentle. Lily, what you've given my son goes far beyond duty. You've given him love, patience, and kindness when he needed it most. You've done what money could never buy. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, Lily allowed herself to smile without reservation. The following weeks brought change to the Daniels mansion. Victor stopped inviting socialites and business tycoons into his home, focusing instead on strengthening the bond with his son. Lily was no longer treated as just staff, she was honored as family. Slowly, respect turned into admiration, and admiration bloomed into something deeper between Victor and Lily. It wasn't a fairy tale romance that happened overnight. It was built quietly in the small moments. Lily helping Ethan with homework while Victor watched with gratitude. Victor catching Lily humming in the garden and realizing how much warmth she brought into their lives. Ethan beaming as he saw the two most important people in his world finally smiling together. Months later, the once lonely mansion was filled with laughter. Victor and Lily stood side by side as Ethan ran through the hallways, his joy echoing off the walls. Victor knew the world outside would gossip about his unconventional choice, about marrying a maid, but he no longer cared, because inside those walls, for the first time, since Emma's passing, his house felt like a home again. And as Victor pulled Lily close, with Ethan grinning between them, he realized that his son's choice had not just given him a new wife, it had given them all a new beginning. This story reminds us that true love and family can't be bought with wealth or appearances. The people who truly matter are the ones who stand by us when no one else does. Sometimes the smallest hands, like a child's, see the clearest truths adults forget. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales of love, betrayal, and the lessons that matter most in life.